Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Pokrovsk direction, where the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. During the previous 12 hours we got a lot of geolocations, lots of updates, so let's start. Summarizing everything before we start, the Russians launched full-scale offensive operation, at least in 4 directions. As a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to enter the village of Krasny Yar. This information was confirmed by different pro-Russian mappers. Furthermore, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their position significantly and to enter the village of Novogrodovka itself. Telling the truth, this is the most important update because we have not just a report from different mappers or something like this. The most important, we received a real video of Russian soldiers that confirms the presence of the Russian soldiers on the territory of the southeastern part of Novogrodovka. In this video we can see the Russian soldiers who were trying to clear the building. They were right in front of the entrance to the building, and we see the Russian drone that was flying above the Russian soldiers, and that was coordinating the movements of the Russian assault troopers. Of course, the video was geolocated, and if we zoom in the situation, these clashes were taking place exactly in this point. This video confirms the Russian control over the territory. Other Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian mappers and pro-Russian mappers and neutral mappers confirm this information, and as you can see we have adjusted the map. So, summarizing everything, the Russians entered Novogrodovka and currently are clearing the southeastern part of the city. Furthermore, we got another report that the Russians launched a full-scale offensive operation towards the village of Mikhailovka. As you can see, the Russians decided to go through the village, not the village, but the coal mine of Russia. They decided not to fight for the territory. Probably this is too difficult, let's say, goal for now. So that's why the Russians decided to move further and to attack Mikhailovka. And as always, as usually these days, the Russians continue moving their forces from on the line Novozhelaya, Ptychye, Kalinovo, and then to M30 road. So 4 offensive roads, the Russians are improving their positions, and we see that the Ukrainians currently haven't managed to show any resistance to the Russian forces. Furthermore, we got reports that according to the different Western media, they are saying that Kremlin is close to crushing a vital Ukrainian town, and they are talking about the Pokrovsk. The main reason for Russia's success in the Pokrovsk front is the exhaustion of and shortage of Ukrainian soldiers. Right, the Economist, after speaking with Ukrainian military personnel during the previous night, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the temporary positions and the concentration of forces in the same direction. Now let's move to the South Donetsk direction, and we got the most funniest update ever, probably, of the story of the 79th Brigade that is responsible for Konstantinovka, Antonovka, for this direction. And today the Russian sources published the video, not the video, but photo, how they managed to capture the battalion banner of the 79th Brigade. So as talking about different units, military units like battalions, brigade, this is the most important symbol of any brigade, their own brigade or battalion banner, and this banner was captured by the Russians. It's like the same that battalion stopped existing or something like this. It's like obviously not just the significant victory, but act of the biggest humiliation of the 79th Brigades, more precisely of the 1st Battalion of these forces. Where exactly the Russians managed to capture the banner, the battalion banner, is unknown, but obviously this is the biggest humiliation ever for this brigade. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Toretsk direction. The Russians during the previous 12 hours managed to improve their position significantly. They have almost secured and cleared the citadel, and according to information we have, Ukrainian troops have withdrawn from their positions in the high-rise building in the east of Dzerzhinsk, Ukrainian name Toretsk. So the Ukrainians haven't managed to stop the Russian pressure, and under the Russian pressure they were forced to fall back completely. This is obviously significant progress of the armed force of Russian Federation. Now the Ukrainians have worse positions ever, and the Russians control the high-rise building area. Most likely during the next few days, the Ukrainians will be forced to move even further towards the next citadel, and they will try to slow down the Russians or to hold them for a while on this line. Now let's move further. We are going to the Kupiansk direction, where the Ukrainians decided to begin their own counter-offensive operation. The Ukrainians counter-attacked the Russian forces between Novovodiane and these tree lines in this forest. This attack was conducted by the Ukrainian 3rd Assault Brigade. They published the video of episodes of the clashes in this direction. They're saying that they managed to counterattack, to restore control, to force the Russians to fall back, and later the pro-Ukrainian sources, mappers, Deep State adjusted the map and shown the progress that Ukrainians managed to achieve. It's very difficult to understand what exactly the Ukrainians are planning to do next. Maybe they got some information that there are not so many Russians there, and they decided to attack and to force the Russians to bring reinforcements and reserves back in this area. So for now we don't know for sure, but once again the attack was conducted by the 3rd Azov Brigade. And this is specialized assault troopers, and they obviously, most likely, this is not the only target and the not only goal of this brigade in this direction. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Kursk direction. We have additional changes on the map. First, let's talk about the western flank, about Komarovka, Krasnooktyabrsk. Today, the Russian sources published the video of how they were FPV droning the Ukrainians inside of this building, and this video confirms the Ukrainian presence in Krasnooktyabrsk. So based on this video we have adjusted the map. Now let's talk about the eastern flank. There are very heavy clashes in this area, and today the Russian sources published the video how they lancet the Ukrainian tank inside of the village, which most likely confirms strong control over at least southeastern part of Ruskaya Konopelka. The Russians are saying, on the other hand, that they managed to repel every single attack in this direction and to save their presence there. So anyway, summarizing both reports, we can make a conclusion that most likely the village of Ruskaya Konopelka is currently in the gray zone, and nobody, neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians, control this area. Now let's move to the northern flank, to the village of Olgovka, where Ukrainians continue suffering losses. The Russians during the previous 24 hours conducted a number of counter-offensive operations. They managed to deal significant damage to the Ukrainians, and some pro-Russian sources reported that the Russians managed to restore control over Nikipelovka and some blocks of Korineva on the Ukrainian side of the Korineva. So the Russians began counteroffensive according to some pro-Russian sources. So let's wait a little bit more. Most likely during the day we're going to receive additional updates about the situation, and if this information is correct, then we will change and adjust the map. The Ukrainians continue FPV droning the Russian forces in Glushkova region during the previous 24 hours. During the previous night we got additional videos of how the Ukrainians were FPV droning the Russian equipment, Russian armored vehicles, personal carriers on the territory of Glushkova. So the Ukrainians still haven't begun the offensive operation, as you can see, but they continued the clearing operation, and as you can see, lots of vehicles were destroyed, and the Ukrainians are continuing this process. And the Ukrainians were attacking the city of Glushkova, and the Ukrainians were attacking the city of the village of Lyschinova. Now let's talk about a very interesting episode that took place in the northern Sumy region. Let's discuss this video in details. The video was published yesterday in the evening by the Russian sources. In this video we can see a huge Russian convoy of armored vehicles and tanks, and as you can see, according to this video, the Russian tanks were heading and moving towards the border with Ukraine. So this is a very weird, very interesting video. At some point the Russian tanks stopped. Let's calculate them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From 8 till 12 tanks, even more, maybe even 14 tanks were located along this road, and then they began attacking and shooting in direction of Ukrainian border. Very weird video, very difficult to understand what the Russians were doing, but if we return back on map, the Russians were moving along this, let's say, road, along this street. They turned to the left in this direction, and then they established their positions just along this street, along this road, and from this road the Russians were bombing and attacking in direction of Ukrainian border. So maybe it's just a media victory, maybe just an attempt to show the Ukrainians that the Russians are waiting for them in this direction. Maybe it's something more. Maybe the Russians are planning to begin a counter-offensive operation in direction of the village by the name of Glukhov or Kanatop or somewhere. This is Glukhov, by the way. So very interesting, and currently I don't know for sure what exactly the Russians were doing there. As for Kiev itself, today we got lots of reports that the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will discuss with Kiev the task of the Ukrainian armed forces operation in the Kursk region. So currently the sources are saying that the United States of America doesn't understand what exactly the Ukrainians are planning to do there. Also, we got report that, according to information we have, the U.S. Embassy required and demanded people to leave Ukraine because during the upcoming holiday, there are going to be massive missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine, including the large populated, let's say, places and something like this. According to, as you know, during this upcoming weekend, they're going to be the Independence Day of Ukraine, and most likely Russia will conduct act of revenge during this Independence Day because the Ukrainians, due to the situation in the Kursk area, so the Russians will attack everything they can, and most likely they will try to attack and they will destroy it as well, energy facilities, and maybe the Russians will attack the nuclear power plants as an act of revenge on Ukraine attack on the Kursk power plant. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.